Matt Chapman's a Blue Jay. We know we did a podcast yesterday, but this is an emergency podcast, so it's episode 2 of season 3 of Toronto Until Blue Jays podcast. Just the Toronto Until podcast. I'm Steve Artabello with Anthony Harris and Theo Giordano. As usual, find us at our website, torontountilt.com. You can find us at Twitter at Toronto Untilt. We're live on Twitch. Just go to Twitch, look for Toronto Untilt. Of course, you can find us on YouTube where we're live right now and where this video will live. Like, comment, subscribe, obviously, but you can find us again by looking for Toronto on Tilt. And finally, we will post the audio of this podcast everywhere that you can get a podcast, basically. We're talking Spotify, we're talking Google, we're talking Apple, Anchor, Breaker, Bleaker, all of the things. Like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, scream it from the rooftops that Matt Chapman is a Blue Jay. Yeah, no, that's a thing that actually just happened this morning. Matt Chapman was traded to the Oakland Athletics for Gunnar Hogland, Kevin Smith, Kirby Snead, and Zach Lowe. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Lowe, even though it's like Loogie, like Logue.
It's never going to matter anymore. We're never going to say his name again.
We'll never hear of him ever again.
Exactly. So, quick rundown on all those guys. Gunnar Hogland is the only one where you're kind of like to me personally, where I'm like, ooh, that's the good prospect, but at the same time, you have to give up good things to get good things. And when I get to the rest of the prospects, Gunnar Hogland makes it, I think, okay to take all the ancillary pieces. So he had to have Tommy John surgery right as the Blue Jays drafted him. So he will be coming back probably middle of this season. Depends how the A's want to handle him now, because he's now their property. And they tried to match Chapman for him, so maybe he doesn't pitch all year because they're super safe with him. But he's kind of the crown jewel. He's the big pitching prospect. He also was a two-way player in college, but he's mostly seen as a pitching prospect. Kevin Smith, I guess, is probably the most known guy since we saw him at the big league level last year, and there was a lot of talk about him because he had a breakout, then he had a down season, then he had another good season last year where he made the big league club, and then just wasn't super great. But again, it was his first crack at the big leagues. That does happen. But Kevin Smith wasn't one of your highest end prospects. He's a guy that, you have Biggio, you got Espinal, you got tons of guys in the system. You got Otto Lopez, who actually made the big league club last year, but you have a bunch of guys who kind of does what he does. So you traded from a position of depth. And then the other two pitchers that went, a couple of lefties. Kirby Snead, we saw last year, excellent flow. He was a useful reliever, but who knows? He goes to the A's. You trade that for Matt Chapman every single day. And Lowe is about to turn 26 years old. He hasn't made the big leagues. He's a lefty, but last year he seemed to take a big step. He's always had good control, good strikeout numbers. It's because he has great command. He doesn't have a big fastball. If you look at his Fangraphs fastball rating, it's 40. So that means he's not throwing very hard. Fangraphs is not as up to date as it used to be. So there's a chance he throws a little bit harder. He could throw in the low 90s. But again, this is just a guy. He's an interesting arm, but he's a dude you trade for Matt Chapman, in my opinion, all day, every single day. Like, what do you two think? Tony, do you want to kick it off? Like, what do you think of the value here? Because I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. It is. He's a good player, even though he's struggled a little bit. I think we can attribute that to health issues, and that is a concern. Hopefully, he's past them, because this guy, elite defender and a good bat too. I was kind of surprised looking back at it how good of a hitter he was a few years ago. He is a full package at third base. And if he was coming off that, going into this trade, we would have had to trade way more. So this could look like a discount in the next 2 years, especially considering he's only making $9.5 million this year and maybe only a little more next year.
And it's so similar to that Donaldson trade where you're getting a guy who hits for power and is going to a ballpark now that's going to help him with that. Who knows how many home runs, if he knows the exact number of home runs that were suppressed by Oakland Stadium, but
I don't think he's cool enough to know that.
Yeah. But we're just shitting on Donaldson now? We're completely out on him?
No, he's just a really cool guy.
Don't worry, JD. Like we said yesterday, he's just going to infiltrate the Yankees locker room, and when it starts going bad, he's just going to blow it up from the inside. That's what we're going with.
But you look at this too, because we were talking about, you said the prospects and how we didn't have to trade any of those big ones, those ones we really don't want to, but if we had to, we now have those guys, because even if we don't make the trade now, those guys are still available. And the guys we gave up, it's just like, the stuff you have to give up for a trade like this, and the stuff not going to kill you, really.
And if you're not 100% sure about the names, when Theo talks about we didn't give up our biggest prospects, he's talking specifically Gabriel Moreno, who we talk about a lot. And then a guy we haven't talked about a ton is Elvis Martinez, who also had a massive power surge and just kind of went nuts last year. And a lot of people, he's a super toolsy. He plays shortstop. We don't know if he's going to be a shortstop, but that's why you can trade Kevin Smith, another insanely toolsy middle infielder at the moment. But those are your two crown jewels. You didn't have to part with them. And like Tony said, so Matt Chapman is coming off a down year. He still put up 3.4 Fangraphs WAR. He still was great, even though he hit 210 with a 314 on base and a 403 slug. He was one of the best defenders in baseball coming off a hip injury. Matt Chapman is a top 3 defender, regardless of position in baseball. There's a reason he has 2 platinum gloves. He is that good. Think Nolan Arenado, if you know what I mean. Think Josh Donaldson on steroids. He is that good defensively. He is a consistent Gold Glove and a consistent threat to win the Platinum Glove. If you don't know what that is, that's for the best defender in the entire league. American.
His WAR was 6 or 7, right, when he was going good offensively.
So the 2 years in 2018 and 2019 where he had his huge breakouts, he came to the big leagues in 2017. That's really where he broke out because he only played half a season. But those 2 full seasons he played before the shortened season where he had that pretty bad hip injury. He had a 6.7 WAR and a 6.1 WAR. We're talking about a guy who takes a lot of walks, and before the hip injury was only striking out in 2018, it was 23.7% of the time, and then 21.9. That sounds high, but that's not extraordinary. Now, last year he struck out 32.5% of the time, right? But he still took his walks. He was coming off a pretty serious hip injury. Now he seemed to kind of get it together and get rolling after the season went on. But one thing I'd really like to point out is what Theo was talking about, home run suppressed, is I don't want to put the JD pressure on him because we were talking about this. Tony said it. Josh Donaldson came here and was a number 2 player in all of baseball. Only Mike Trout was better than him. And then he won the MVP in that year because he out-battled Mike Trout. That's how good Josh Donaldson was, right? I love Matt Chapman, but I don't want to put that kind of expectations on him because the expectations is to be the MVP, to literally come on this team and be better than Vladdy.
The other
Bo
problem he has is we were talking about Freddie Freeman the last 2 days. That's an issue where it's I don't think people are disappointed about the trade, but it's definitely we were talking Jose Ramirez, we were talking Freddie Freeman, he's going to have that pressure still.
See, to me, you talk about the home run suppression in Oakland. So there's that. We saw it with Marcus Semien. We saw a guy who had a bad season bounce back and have a good season. It's just there's so many things about him coming here that point to an offensive resurgence. Now, again, it all has to do with health, but you saw how well he was able to still play defense at third. So you could see why maybe it would take a little while, the swing, just the layoff. Again, a hip injury. It's not a minor thing. But he did hit 27 home runs last year. He did show that he still had the pop. So if he can bring the strikeout numbers down to kind of what his average is, and honestly, just looking at Fangraphs, they even project a bounce back season. Zips has him hitting 230 average, 324, 458, but they're giving him a 12 offensive runs produced and a 13 defense. He's a 5 WAR player is essentially what they're saying he's going to be. And that I think is kind of again, he's not the centerpiece of their offense like he was in Oakland. He's going to hit what, 6th, 7th, maybe 5,
maybe 5, because unless it depends where Gurriel goes, right? If you hit him and where Biggio, because he is the left.
And if they do get another lefty bat, because they did talk about that. Ross Atkins did say the quote was that they're happy with what they have, but if they can find a left-handed hitter that's better than one of their right-handed hitters, they would definitely still do that. So, if they were going to pay Freddie Freeman all that money, it's not hard to see them giving someone else money. Michael Conforto.
I heard
someone
He's
we've
also
talked
Ramirez
about.
is
starting
name
to
being
plan
thrown
for
around.
Conforto because he's still looking for a multi-year deal, and the Blue Jays are going to swoop in right at the end and give him a 1 year, $20 million deal.
Yeah, I'd have no problem if you did with him what you did with Marcus Semien. It's exactly 1 year
exactly
deal,
Same
give him
contract,
all the
same
money,
value, yeah.
right? Like Ross Atkins did the Ross Atkins thing. He said, we're good, but we're still available to do things. But here's the thing. They've been super aggressive. So it's kind of hard to think that they're not going to continue to be super aggressive considering the report that they're still interested in Jose Ramirez, but to play second base. Like this team, if they're looking at Freddie Freeman, if they're looking for someone like Jose Ramirez and trying to get him to play a different position because they just got Matt Chapman, like this team isn't fucking around. So you can't really rule anything out. You can't rule out a trade for like another trade for a left-handed outfielder or maybe a second. Like it at this point, anything's on the deal because they're clearly out here trying to win. And again, if you look at the structure, Matt Chapman, Tony Seddy is 2 years of control this year and next year. Teoscar, 2 years of control, 2 years left of Ryu. Like their window now, like the World Series window, and I'm not joking around now, has been kicked open for at least the next 2 years. Now, again, you have George Springer for 4 years. You got Kevin Gossman for 5 years. You got Berrios for 7 years. Vladdy and Bo, you still have 5 years of team control each. Actually, it might be 5 and 6. But like, you see where I'm getting at here, right? Like, I'm not saying the window is only 2 years, but the way this team is constructed and the way they've loaded up, that's what it looks like to me. Is they're saying like, no, we're trying to win right now and next year, and we will do.
Steve just froze.
Yeah,
I can finish his thought though.
I think they're going
aggressive
all in.
I
Going
froze.
all in.
Did I get all of it out before I froze?
Not really, but we got the point. I think.
Yeah,
I do want to talk
They're
about this
being
Jose
aggressive.
I do want to talk about this Jose Ramirez thing and the fact that Ken Rosenthal was tweeting how just out of nowhere that he's open to playing second and how this is my only thing is what else can the Jays in Cleveland talk about that they haven't talked about regarding this trade for the last like year now? They've been trying to do this trade for so long. Like we know what they want, and I don't think we're willing to give it. So this is going to have to be a deadline deal. I don't see this happening now.
So that's a great point. Me and Theo were talking before we started recording. That's something now that I'm thinking too. Like we're on the same page there. Tony, you can chime in if you think you agree. Just the fact that he's got a year and a half of control. Like if you got him at the deadline, he would have the rest of that year and next year of control. Again, with what I've said about what the window looks like with team control and guys having this year and next year at least. It seems like that's something you would wait to do because this isn't like a talent reason, but it's a trying to not have all of your fans not show up reason. You start the season with Jose Ramirez and Bieber, and then if you're terrible, then you move on from Jose Ramirez. And then the next year is probably Bieber, and then maybe nobody goes to Cleveland games anymore. But
I don't think they're going to be terrible this year, though. That's the problem.
Well, it'll be interesting because that division's not great. Like it's the White Sox and everybody else. And if Bieber does bounce back and is one of the best pitchers in baseball again,
and they have
you always have a chance.
The formula for them to be good is still in place. Obviously, they're lacking offensively, but with the expanded playoffs and the division being easy, they can make a playoff run.
And they have a ton of prospects. So if one of them breaks through.
That's one of the reasons why I don't see it happening this year. I'm the Debbie Downer here. Everyone else is.
You were a huge Debbie Downer
Ramirez,
all
and Freddie
day.
Freeman, and Kyle Schwarber, and every good player. But I'm the one saying it's probably not going to happen.
Me and Steve, we're talking about generational team, best team ever, and then Tony had to put the logic into it. And now, 3 hours later, we were talking about this closer to lunch, and then now we're starting to see. Okay, this was kind of a pipe dream. But, it is nice to believe a little bit. And you're probably right. Like, this probably doesn't happen this year. And that is a really good point. The expanded playoffs might have fucked the Jays in this scenario if Cleveland's still kind of in it.
However, there is a chance that Cleveland's quite bad. There is that. Like, there is still that opportunity.
Minnesota, like, they're not, like, terrible teams.
I mean, Minnesota's still worse than Cleveland right now. They still have to make more moves.
Well, if that they're trying to apparently get in on Trevor's Story. I don't know if you can hear the puppy going nuts, but sorry. But yeah, like if they do, like they are clearly doing things. They went out and made that weird flip with Donaldson to free up money to do other stuff. They went and got Sonny Gray. Like the Twins are out here trying to do some things. Does it make sense to me? Not really. But if they keep improving their team, it makes that division a little bit harder. Not so much for the White Sox, much more for the Guardians, right? Because they don't have as much talent as that White Sox team does, and they're clearly not going to keep throwing money at it like the White Sox are. Like the White Sox are like, oh, yeah, we want to have a better bullpen. Everyone gets $5-6 million. We don't care. 2-year deal, fine. Like Joe Kelly, we'll give it to you. You've been good in the past. There is a way for the Guardians to be bad in this deal to happen, but Tony's right, and like you're right to be afraid of expanded playoffs, and because this division is pretty soft. Like the Tigers have gotten better, but they're still not a great division. So Jose Ramirez is an MVP candidate for a reason. Like he's a guy that can, in early in a season in a bad division, like if Bieber's great and he's great, like they can do a lot. Like it's baseball. Two guys can't completely win all the games, but if you're playing against bad teams and you have the two best players.
Also, the thought that like he would come here and go to second tells you how good Chapman is defensively. Like that would not happen for basically everyone else.
Well,
Exactly.
Ramirez isn't like a Gold Glover himself, but obviously he would.
He's that caliber. He is a Gold Glove caliber guy, but I mean, Matt Chapman's been around to make sure that people in the AL can't win Gold Gloves at third base, right? Like that's
our Pilar scenario we had where we were like every year he was coming like second.
Oh yeah, because Kiermaier had that like the first year where Pilar had the big center field year.
Superman could do everything but win a Gold Glove.
Yeah, well, and then like if that was the year that Kevin Kiermaier had like by the numbers one of the greatest defensive seasons in center field of all time, because he had like the assists, his range rating was insane. He also had every single highlight where he stole like 1 million home runs. So yeah, it was unfortunate for Kevin Pilar.
I don't feel bad for him.
Yeah, me neither. Some stuff has come out about Kevin Pilar. He said some things I don't really agree with, so I don't really care.
Should we talk about Schwarber? Because that was something we talked a lot about yesterday. And I thought the Chapman deal, when I went to bed yesterday, my thought was, okay, if you get Chapman, cool. But I wanted Schwarber too. I think that would work out good. It makes sense defensively. But now it looks like we're just getting the Chapman, no Schwarber. He got signed on a reasonable deal, I thought. But obviously, there's different reasons why he might not have wanted to sign.
He's getting 19, 20 million a season?
Per, but that was like the projection, right? Like 20 per?
Yeah, but
it's around the high end.
That was about.
I'll say if the Jays made the deal, I wouldn't have been upset about it, is what I'm trying to say. But how do you feel? Like, were you disappointed when that happened?
I texted you guys as soon as the Chapman deal happened that I was like, I think it guarantees Schwarber's coming now because he's going to DH. And then he went to the Phillies.
The Phillies were in a desperate spot too. They had to get somebody to please Bryce Harper because he's been talking this whole time. We got to improve.
Exactly. I still wouldn't. I wouldn't count out Bryant going to Philly because Harper and Bryant are friends.
Yeah, we'll see. That would put them over the luxury tax unless they move stuff around, and we don't know if they're willing to do that. But for the Phillies, I'd want them to do it.
Yeah, well, they were team stupid money when they signed Harper, and then immediately were like, we might have made a mistake. And, it's probably time to be team stupid money again if you have Bryce Harper.
Yeah, like they've signed a big guy like every year.
Yeah, Wheeler's great. You still have Aaron Nola. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you look at them and you're like, well, you got Schwarber now. And if you do add someone like Chris Bryant, like you start to look at the rest of that team, and it's like, that division they're in is not necessarily great either.
No,
I mean the Mets are getting better, so that's the thing. And I guess the it's getting better. It's getting better, but
they still have such a big hole in their bullpen. It's still, I know they addressed it a little bit, but I mean Familia and Ebel, I don't think they're going to solve all of their problems, and that's what held them back, really.
That's true. Their bullpen was real bad last year.
And anyone on the roster has the potential of having the worst season of their career at any moment.
True. And like that actually brings me back to the Jays, and it's just like you've insulated against that again. Like you just have another dude who again, you're hoping for him to bounce back, but at the same time, like you'd still take what he did last year. Remember the defense that was played at third base last year. Just remember it. Right? Injured Kevin Biggio trying to play third base with a hurt hand and then a hurt, like just getting hurt constantly and trying to play third base and not looking like a third baseman, like something that I said multiple times last year. Like, now you have not just one of the best defenders at third base, you have one of the best defenders in all of baseball, right? And something we haven't got to, I can't believe we're 20 minutes in and we haven't got to, because I was talking about this with you guys. What this does for Bo Bichette is massive. Oh, freezing. I'm back.
Yeah,
okay,
we heard it though.
Now, Jose Ramirez would make it even better, but Matt Chapman is so good defensively, it's going to make Bo have to make less plays. But on top of that, someone that I've compared Bo to in terms of like the defense, not looking great early on, making a lot of errors that really improved, is Trevor Story. Trevor Story had Nolan Arenado, and Trevor Story has said multiple times, if it wasn't for having Nolan Arenado to work beside, he wouldn't be the defender that he is now. Like, it was first taking pressure off him so he didn't have to think that he had to make all of the plays and make some of the errors, because Arenado would just cut in front of him, because Arenado, we're also talking about being one of the best third basemen ever in terms of defense. That's what Chapman's going to provide for Bo. Like, bare minimum, if the offense is exactly what it is last year and it doesn't change, what he's going to add defensively for Bo's development, and for Ryu, gets a lot of ground balls and we're kind of needing to bounce back, for Gossman, who throws a splitter, for Jose Barrios, who throws a two-seamer, Manoah. If you're getting ground balls, if it goes to the left side of the infield, there's a really good chance it's an out now. It makes the team so much better defensively.
Even your backup plan at third now is still a decent option. It's not like it's Biggio. Like, your secondary option is Espinal, which is I do want to talk about. We should talk about the Espinal Biggio now. That potential platoon we have at second. We spent a lot of time talking about Espinal this offseason, saying how if he was starting third baseman, how much time was he going to get there? Now it looks like he's going to get a lot more at second. Do you like that more for him? Do you think that's better for Biggio, that he's not you have to worry about third base?
I think Muji, I said this a ton, that I wanted Biggio to move back to second base. To have Espinal defensively be able to play second base as well, where he was a shortstop, so you think he's really going to easily be able to play second base. He played a great third base last year, even though that's not his position. I don't think it's going to be a problem for him at all to move over to second base. I think he'll be even better defensively, and that's going to push Biggio. Because now, like last year, he was given third base. He had all the injuries, and it just didn't, he struggled. It just didn't work out. This year, he's not given second base. Like, he has a guy pushing him who at least could steal at bats against lefties. Like, he could immediately take playing time away from him directly.
He could be a trade piece by the deadline. If he's not, like, they'll just say, no, we don't need you.
Well, Biggio could also be playing in left field if you want to DH Gurriel. Right now, he has to be a better off defensive option. But, I mean, Gurriel's got a great arm, but we saw some real interesting adventures in left field. So Biggio's going to have opportunity, but he's really going to have to bounce back this year. And look around this team. Look at this pitching staff. Look at this bullpen. Look at this team. Like, there's competition for playing time. The outfield's packed. Grichuk doesn't have a spot, right? So there's instant competition. The infield now has two guys for second base, right? So now you have a battle there. Like, third base you think is locked down, shortstop and first base, because you got Vladdy, Chapman, and you got, God, we haven't even talked about the fact that Moreno could be coming, and eventually you could have another Bo Vladdy level prospect taking over a defensive position like catcher, where the reports are he's really good at it. Like, this team is so exciting. This Chapman deal has really brought everything together. Like, again, I wanted Jose Ramirez. I wanted to get more left-handed. You can still get more left-handed because they are very right-handed heavy. If you want to talk about a downside, that's going to be it. You got a guy that hits for a lot of power last year and struck out a lot. That's something you had a lot of. You had a lot of right-handed guys that did that. You didn't have a lot of right-handed guys that played. I mean, you had no one that played Matt Chapman's kind of defense. So that's something different that he does provide. But yeah, you would like a left-handed bat. But here's the thing. We talked about Biggio maybe playing in left field. You can still add, again, they're still talking about adding Jose Ramirez and putting him at second base. Like, there's other ways to get more left-handed. There is. So yeah, I was banging the drum for Jose Ramirez, But Matt Chapman, like, look what we've seen from two players from Oakland coming here. One specifically in Semien right after a down year. Like, it's that there's a track record for them being a lot better in this division where all the ballparks are a lot friendlier offensively.
Yeah, and I was asking this question earlier to you guys because I wasn't really sure up until recently, and then you guys brought some good points. Like, is this team right now better than what we had at the end of last season? And that's considering the Robbie Ray, how good he was, considering how Semien had a career year. Like, right now, would you say this team would be better than what we had with everything included, bullpen, pitching, lineup?
You guys know how much I love Kevin Gausman and that I like him more than Robbie Ray. So I don't like, if anything, I see that as a wash. Now I know he won the Cy Young last year. So, okay, maybe Gausman doesn't have a sub-3 ERA, but I still think he's a number one pitcher. I think Berrios can get better here. As you saw, he had that little hiccup where he might have been tipping his pitches and then he listened to Pete Walker and how dirty did Berrios look down the stretch, right? Like there's still a chance that he fits in here and is even better. So you have that. You have Manoah, who looked phenomenal. You got Ryu, who there's real competition. Like he can't, like he has, like he could lose his, like, I mean, he makes $20 million. It'd be kind of hard for him technically to lose his spot in the rotation, but it's something that could happen if he's not good.
If you're in a playoff run and he's like,
yeah,
September he had last year,
where they put him on the IL last year with a sore shoulder. It was rest. Like they put him on the IL for rest because he wasn't pitching well. Right? Like that's not a surprise. Like there's so much competition on this team that I gotta say it's better than the way last year ended. I how can you, like, to me, I don't think there's any way to say it, like how you couldn't.
Oh, not to mention, you lose Springer, but theoretically you're going to get more games from George Springer.
You lose Semien. But yeah, no, exactly. Like that's something that I don't think a lot of people have talked about, where, yeah, you've directly lost Semien. And that offense doesn't all have to be replaced by Chapman. It could be replaced by the fact that, what did we get, 84 games out of George Springer? Was it even 84?
But to be fair, we got a lot of games from our other core offensive players, right?
Like including Marcus Semien, who's now not here.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like, injuries do happen, but like these guys are young. Vladdy's in shape now.
Springer has hurt a lot, so I'm hoping to get like 140.
Springer was hurt a lot last year, but he's been pretty durable for Houston. Like 145 games for him is easy. You know what I mean? Like, let me pull up his Fangraphs play. Just like, I feel like other than last year, George Springer has been pretty consistently healthy throughout his career.
Yeah, last year was the worst as far as health, but he's always kind of nicked up, missing.
Yeah, so he played 162 in 2016, 140 in 2017, 140 in 2018, and then it was 122. And then in the shortened season, he basically played the entire season. He played 51 of the 62 games. And then last year, he played 78. So he didn't even play half the season.
And a lot of those he was playing hurt, like with that big knee brace.
And he still hit 22 dingers in not even half a season on one leg. Like, let that sink in. He did that banged up the whole season. He still had an over 900 OPS on one leg. Think about that. Like, you could get a huge upgrade just from having him around more often. And now, depending on how the DH looks, you can give him a lot more days there, right? Through the season. Like, you can, if you don't add anyone, if you go into the season right now, you can move it around, right? I mean, it means Grichuk's probably going to get more games than I want him to get, but it's possible.
Do you think it's going to be mostly Kirk and Grichuk kind of rotating through there?
I think at the moment, if they don't add anyone and if they don't make a big trade, I think Kirk is a big, like, I think he's going to be there almost more often than not. Like, Randall's going to have to rely on an injury and the fact that defensively in a corner, like, you would take him over Gurriel. You know what I mean? Like, in center, he's average at best. In a corner,
last year in center.
Yeah, I guess you could call him average in center, but like, I'd call him average last year in center field. But in a corner, I'd call him above average, just because that's generally what happens to guys. Like center field is incredibly hard unless you're insanely athletic. Like that's why they're even talking about moving Mike Trout into a corner this year. That and the fact that he's been hurt. But you know what I mean? He can be solid defensively in a corner. And he, like right now, he is a guy you're going to put in center field probably over Teoscar, just because Teoscar looked better in a corner than he ever had.
Yeah, you want to talk about Lourdes' circus? That's not even comparison.
I mean, it is pretty comparable.
You know
it's very comparable.
I'm just realizing now that this Lourdes jersey I bought, I think Lourdes is going to be on the team now.
Well, yeah, it's looking that way.
Good for me, at least. I think he might, that's good. Let's see if he keeps it going.
Okay. Your left fielder.
There's a lot of
guys.
Might
be your DH.
You know what? With a bat like that, you got to keep.
You'll take it. Hey, if you hit the way he did down the stretch last year before he hurt his hand again, you take it. Any more thoughts that you guys really wanted to get into? Again, we got to Schwarber not happening. We got to Freeman's still out there, but again, they've started talking about the Jays being out on it. I don't doubt anything at this point, but it is now kind of hard to see.
Well, because he wants such a long term. That seems like a deal breaker.
And you're talking now about he's exclusively playing, like him and Vladdy are basically splitting first in DH, and you're locking down the DH. So George, like, you know what I mean? Like that's why I keep saying, you know what I mean? But that's why I don't see it as likely right now, just because they did go get the third baseman. And I mean, I'm still here for it because, again, I'm talking about this 2-year window where they're trying to win a World Series right fucking now. Sure.
I'm out on it. I don't want him anymore.
Yeah, we talked about it
just
last
out here
night when you signed off.
Fiscally responsible.
Freddie Freeman blew his chance to be on the Blue Jays. He didn't want to take a shorter term.
What are we, 10 years ago trying to sign these 32-year-old just a 10-year contract?
I would like to say, though, I just really want to see him go to the Dodgers at this point, just because I don't want him in the AL East. Even on a long-term deal, I don't want to see. Do you want to see him in Tampa? Like, forget the fact that I definitely don't want to see him with the Red Sox. Do you want to see him win the Rays in that house of horror? Do you want to give the Rays more good players? No.
Well, someone has to blink first. It's either going to be Freddie's going to end up taking a shorter deal, or one of these teams will give him a longer one. Yeah. Right now, it seems like Tampa's the only one that's offering 6 years.
Yeah. But then again, like the Dodgers do like to go super high AAVs if they're going to go short term, and Freddie does spend his off seasons there. Even though he plays for Canada, he grew up in California, so that's another thing. And I just don't.
His parents got married in Oshawa. It's a fun fact.
Well, that's why he plays for Canada. He played for Canada WBC because his parents are they're Canadian, like they're from here. No, they live. I'm pretty sure they live in California. Why would you move back to Oshawa?
They live somewhere nice, yeah,
dude. If you move to California, why would you ever like? I love Canada in terms of being, but it's cold. California is beautiful. I mean, there's earthquakes and shit, but it's beautiful.
a lot of taxes though.
I mean,
there's no taxes here. You're right.
I was going to say
taxes in Canada.
No, I'm saying that's why he would go to Tampa, because the taxes.
Come to the tax freedom of Canada.
Well, let's be honest. You have a good accountant. They'll find a way. You'll be okay. You know what I mean? You just say you're a resident. Like, that's where all the Jays do. They live in Florida. Most of them do actually live in Florida because of the complex, but you live in Florida, so that's generally where the vast majority of your money gets taxed, because that's where you're a resident of, and there's no state tax in Florida. So. Or state income tax. But like, that's, again, now we're getting way too inside baseball than finances.
I have one more thing that I don't know if we discussed. You heard all this Jock Peterson stuff?
That's like a Corey Dickerson level guy, and it's kind of like Eddie Rosario. I mean, Dickerson,
I'm pretty bad for a few years.
Yeah, like Dickerson, I'm almost more interested in because that's a bench role. Like you know what his role is going in, and I wouldn't mind having that bat just to have another left-handed guy. To move in there, and again, I'd rather him play than Grichuk, just because I like Dickerson against righties. He has a good career of hitting right-handed pitching. He just does. He's always been good against them. So I'm interested in him because you know what that role would be. If Jock Peterson's in that role, I guess, but Dickerson doesn't strike out as much. He doesn't hit for as much power, but he hits for a higher average. Like, I think he provides the type of things, more so the type of things that Jays say that they value anyways. And again, if you're not getting Schwarber, if you're not getting the big one, reports are Cleveland asked for Manoah Moreno Martinez. No wonder they said get fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if they did, I could imagine
Like
why.
it's a crazy act.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. You're asking for Moreno's like a top 10 at conservative, depending on who's ranking them prospect. He's top 5 in other places. Manoah was just a great pitcher in the big leagues. And we're talking again about Elrose Martinez being
5 more years of control for Manoah too. Why would you do that for 2 years of
and 6 to 7 years, depending if you delay their service time for Moreno and Martinez. Like it's just right. And Moreno and Martinez don't need to be on the 40 man. Like there's that's one of those things where it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm usually the one who's like trade the prospects, but like that's to me that's an insane
a couple hours ago we would have.
Well, here's the thing. If you're talking, if you were like or Elvis Martinez and like Nate Pearson and Jordan Groshans, I'd seriously think about that.
Yeah, like Nate Pearson, like last year would have been no way, but
here's the thing. But like I'd seriously think about that, and he's also a potentially super valuable piece in the bullpen and depth for the like. Here's the thing: is if Nate Pearson does figure it out, and now it's becoming more of it. Like he's getting older, he's got to do it, he's got to prove it. But he throws 100. Like you can dream on that, you know what I mean? And if he does figure it out, holy shit, this team is even more ridiculous, right? Like with all these like with the condensed schedule, the fact there's gonna be a bunch of double headers. Like I think Tony was the one who said there's one off day in April, right? Could have a 6-man rotation. Could be seeing Pearson. But again, if you took out Moreno and Manoah and you threw in Pearson and another top prospect and Martinez, like I'd still probably really think about that.
I take my question back before because I forgot we had like Tommy Malone and shit like as options to start in April.
Yeah, our pitching is.
Remember how angry I was about Tommy Malone?
And I told you he was going to start very early.
So upset, and he did, and it was so bad.
Stripling and how many starts?
Like Tanner Rourke. Remember TJ Zoik? Remember when I thought TJ Zoik might be a thing? Oh, Mark, I don't disagree. Pearson
read the comments by for podcast listeners.
Honestly, I don't disagree. Pearson really could be a closer. We're talking about a guy who throws 100 and up. Like he's thrown 105 before. He is a slider in the mid 90s at times coming out of the bullpen. Like, yeah, dude, I agree with that. Like that's, and you still have Jordan Romano. And I mean, Julian Merriweather's just hurt all the time. But look at that. Look at all the heat you can bring out of the bullpen. That's
great. In April too. Yeah, our bullpen's amazing.
Well, then you have the guys who throw weird. Andrew Vasquez is apparently like he's a 6'6" lefty who throws like I think it was like 70% or 80% breaking balls in his very short big league appearance. He throws a wicked, I believe it's a curveball, but it's one of those Jose Barrios. Like I don't know if it's a curveball, it's a slider because he's got a ton of movement. Again, I don't know what he is. He's a random guy who could be a reliever. Who knows? But if you have all this fire at the back end of the bullpen, and then you have guys like Simber and him that bring weird looks. Have you seen how the Rays build the bullpen? Have you seen how successful the Rays are at building a bullpen that way? Theo, if you know how to pull up more comments, go for it.
I'm pulling up as we go.
Realistic trade could be Gurriel Jr., Kirk, Biggio, Grosjean. Yeah, I'd do that. And that's a lot of guys. That's a roster player in Gurriel.
Oh, but again, you're getting guy.
Jose Ramirez. Like it's 3 roster players, but
I don't know about that. We'd have to take I
don't know about the 3 top, like at that point, and then 3. Like that's
what other guy could we take off the roster?
If you were telling me you were going to trade Biggio and Gurriel to make that happen, and for example, you signed again, I'll throw it out there, Corey Dickerson to play left field instead of Gurriel. I'm very here for that. That's something I'd have no problem with.
Yeah, I have no problem. I know everyone else here loves Lourdes Gurriel all the time. I'm the one who doesn't like him as much. Apparently, I'd be very okay with trading.
Yeah, I agree with Tony.
I think every Blue Jay fan should feel that way.
Yeah, I think the guys you should like Kirk, Biggio, Gurriel are guys, if you like them, to be ready that trade could end up happening. And those are the pieces that would be.
They could be the roster pieces that go the other way.
And Gurriel, especially with the contract, like
he's so cheap.
How many years?
He's so cheap. 2.
Or 2 more
and
years.
He doesn't actually have that extra year of control. They clarified that last year. He has this year and next year. He's another one of those guys with those 2 years of service time. But I mean, if you upgraded with Jose Ramirez again, I'm gonna take that every day.
Yeah.
Theo, any other ones? I think Pearson issues are pitching length in game. He usually struggles second and third time through the lineup. He hasn't really gotten second and third time through the lineup
because
he's
his
had those
command
walk
has been
issues.
so off. The pitch count's so elevated.
But I don't disagree about how good he could be in the bullpen. And again, he has to prove that he can be a starter. He hasn't done it. We've seen him be really good in the bullpen. We've seen it as recently as last year down the stretch. He was really good. You saw it in that shortened season in the playoffs. I know it was one game, but you got that glimpse of it when he just was pumping fastballs past the Rays and it didn't look like anyone was going to touch him. And he was all like, you've seen it with him, right? Like you've seen it in that role. We haven't seen it as a starter, but you actually have seen it in that role. So I don't disagree with him. Again, I don't disagree with him as a reliever. I'm not sure if the issues are the second and times through the order, just because I don't think we've seen him get that far through the order just because he's walked so many guys. I mean, we might have seen him get the second time, but like it's because he's walked so many guys.
Yeah, that Astros game, that was only last season. When how many guys did he?
That was the first time he got called up. I don't think he didn't. Yeah, I don't know if he didn't get out of the first inning. I don't know if he got 2 outs. I think he got 2 outs, but I don't know if he got 2 outs. He might have only got 1. But exactly, that was early in the season last year. That was the first time he got called up. Wasn't a great spot to put him in, but he did not look good.
Yeah.
Just end of story. So for me, I agree. Gunnar Hogland is definitely the one. I 100%.
We
I
talked
100%
about
agree.
before the show. We were saying how like this is the one thing that Jays have been able to replenish quickly, like these types of pitchers.
Well, they're not afraid to take risks on the high upside guys that might have Tommy John like Hogland did, and at the same time, you look at the way the rotation's locked up. You look at, again, a guy like Pearson who's right there, a guy like Manoah who just came up. The fact that they keep signing like they're so good at these international guys. They're so good at drafting these guys. They've been drafting other college arms too. You do have other guys like Kloffenstein is a guy we don't talk about anymore, but was a big arm and was a kind of an important guy when they took him. They're just other guys. So Hogland was definitely the centerpiece and he was the hardest to give up. But for me, again, you got to give up good stuff to get good stuff. So yeah, it hurt, but I could see why he was, like I was saying at the beginning, he was the centerpiece that allowed the O's to be like, okay, we'll take all the ancillary pieces if we get Gunnar Hogland, and then okay, we'll make the deal.
There's a lot of Kevin Smith hype too. It's a lot of people who believe in him.
My favorite thing is someone tweeted that Kevin Smith is a dude who's randomly gonna have a 4.5 WAR season in Oakland, and like, yeah, like. I can totally see it. I really could. Yeah. He could be the guy that they thought Brett Laurie was going to be in the Josh Donaldson trade. Like, honestly. Or the guy they thought Franklin Barreto was going to be. Like, that could be Kevin Smith. Who knows?
Like, do you think that was a situation where they were deciding between Groshans and Smith and they preferred Kevin Smith, or it was the Blue Jays?
I think the Blue Jays, I think the Blue Jays rather do it because, again, the guys they traded also cleared up a lot of 40-man room. Kirby Snead, Lowe, and basically everyone but Hogland. Kevin Smith, they were all on the 40-man. So you cleaned up a bunch of 40-man guys too. That's another thing to keep in mind is what they traded actually made their roster more flexible.
Yeah.
So that's also a plus.
Yeah.
We
got anything else? I'm trying to. We basically turned from defense doesn't matter to now. I just realized that because yesterday we were talking about how good of this offense is going to be if we make one of these deals. Who cares where you put them defensively? And now we're like the opposite, where it's like, you know what? It's great to have an elite defense. You need an elite defense.
Well, if they went that way, it's like, well, you can see the way they're going, and it's like, let's get elite pitching and let's get all the bats. I think the Jays do get. Yeah, we agree, man. That's kind of what we're thinking. Tony is the one.
I don't agree.
Tony is the one who's trying to bring the realism here by saying.
I think it's going to be in the off season if it happens. Next off season if it happens at all, because they can still hold on and get a good package with the 1 year left. With how good he is.
To be honest, I heard Scotty Mitchell say it. I think it was on Overdrive. I heard him say it right before we started the podcast. Until Jose Ramirez gets traded to another team that's not the Blue Jays, because I don't think the chances of him extending
zero.
Really? So until he gets traded to a team that's not the Blue Jays, with the Blue Jays front office being guys from Cleveland, the Jays are going to be connected to him until otherwise, honestly. And me and Theo are believers, and Tony's a little bit more.
Dude, we were
trying to
talking
be
about
realistic.
this trade when it was like a Shane Bieber package deal with him.
That's
how long we've been wanting this trade for.
Yeah, we were talking about it in season. Like, we've been banging the J-Ram trade drum as long as I was banging the Kevin Gossman thing. And what was you guys had one too? You brought it up last one. Kikuchi. Yeah, you guys were on the Kikuchi train. I was on the Gossman train, and we've been on the J-Ram train just as long. So,
no, they've done everything we wanted except for not sign Freddie Freeman. And trade for Ramirez.
Well, we're still waiting for the Conforto train to come into the station.
I'm for Conforto now. I'd be all about 1 year deal would be sick. I think he'd really, really do well here.
Oh yeah. And again, you've already signed, like, you didn't have to give up the draft pick to get Gossman. Also, didn't draft picks just go like, I mean, I know it takes effect later, but here's the thing. 2-year window, like we kept talking about. You go get Michael.
Not 2-year window, 2-year World Series window.
2 years World Series window before you have to start making decisions on guys,
they got
right?
Like 2 picks anyways. They got the Robbie Ray pick and the Semien pick, right?
That's true. So they have extra. So if you lose a pick, not who cares, but if you lose your pick, realistically, the way we're talking with the Blue Jays and where we expect them to finish, where those comp picks are going to be, and where their draft pick would be, isn't going to be that big of a deal. We're talking like 10 spots.
Yeah.
So exactly.
You're not World Series favorites very often, which I'm going to say we are because we're the AL favorites, which is basically being the World Series favorites.
I'm guessing the Dodgers are, but
Dodgers and there's someone else, I think. Let me check. Is it?
I know it's not the Braves. I would almost guarantee it's the Dodgers because it's almost always the Dodgers. Well, because the Dodgers don't have Correa.
Aren't the Mets always overvalued? Oh, he fell out. Let's check. We're tied with the Astros.
Yeah,
so it's tied in second. Yeah, I thought we were ahead of better odds than the Astros. Maybe when they sign Correa, it'll move a bit, but let's see back here.
Well, the Astros, they always figure they're always good.
Yeah, we figured out it's the Astros that are tied with us.
Okay.
But yeah, so we're tied for first in the AL, and the Dodgers are always,
Yeah,
I'm surprised the Mets always, like last year they were plus 900.
It's the fact that they're the Mets. Right.
Yeah.
Like if they were the Yankees, because the Yankees are such a public team, the way the Dodgers are a public team, like that's another thing, right? When the Yankees are super popular, like they're such a public team that they're a team that gets favored a ton. But that's a gambling thing. Yeah. Anything else that you guys wanted to get to? Theo, are there any more questions maybe?
I think that's
just
questions.
Concern or like reactions.
Commenting. We appreciate the comments.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Much appreciated.
I got nothing else. I have covered my list, my sick game. So
yeah,
for showing up.
Theo battling through big time. If the Jays were able to pull off a trade for J-Ram, thank you for. Oh my God, if you did both.
I think Conforto would be a nice left fielder either way. I don't. Think
exactly.
Ramirez is like the reason everything works.
Well, you can also just go get the left fielder. Then again, talking about getting Jose Ramirez at the deadline, that's still it's still a possibility. Like I don't think they're tied to each other.
We're really good
do them independent. Yeah,
like you don't want Jose. You know what? You don't.
Yeah, Tony's like so anti Jose Ramirez. I don't understand what's going on.
About Chapman, like he's not that good a fielder, and then there's like, oh, why do we even need him? I'm starting to think you don't even like the guy.
Tony's started here
big the whole time. Now we have Chapman for 2 years. I don't want to trade like all of our top prospects for him.
That does not sound like you.
World Series favorite, pretty much.
That does not sound like the Anthony I know. Doesn't want to trade prospects. The guy who would want to trade everything for a World Series. Try to trade every prospect possible.
We traded a lot today already.
Okay, but we still have those like Groshans that I think is still going to be traded eventually. Like we have the assets still. I don't know.
No, they definitely have the assets.
Maximize. You do not want to sit there. Like if we miss the deadline, we don't do this deal, and we have the option to, and you're sitting there in November, and another ALCS loss, wondering what could have been.
Another ALCS loss, as in, it's been a while since they've even been there, so
feels like just yesterday, Steve. We were celebrating that.
Here's the thing. I've been saying this entire podcast that the 2-year World Series window, so you're all in. So I disagree with Tony, but I see where he's coming from. But I think again, I agree with you. You throw everything in, you go for it. You just you, and they're doing it. They're making every intention to be that's what they want to do. So.
As long as not Moreno, I'll even give up Martinez.
Well,
I don't.
You said
Moreno. Well, here's the thing, Moreno. I just think like they consider him the way that they like. Again, he's talked about in the same breath of the way that they talked about Vladdy and Bo. Like that's just the prospect capital we're talking about here. Like a guy who is rated that highly that everyone seems to say is going to be really, really good. Like every single evaluator seems to agree that this kid has the potential to be
saying
elite.
that when you already have Kirk, who's like taking baseball by storm a bit, just with his like body.
He's an
type and how good
unbelievable
he is.
hitter. Like
They're
an
like, no, we got a better
unbelievable
guy.
hitter.
Like it's hard to get them. Yeah,
Right. So Craig, take a 1 year. Hey,
I think Houston's. Get that done.
yeah, like I could see him going back there, but agreed.
All the players are excited. Apparently, they kind of think he's coming back, but
It wouldn't surprise me. Hey, the Jays have been interested, and if it's a 1 year deal, I'm pretty sure the Jays would definitely be giving him like as much money as possible in a 1 year deal.
Well,
We
he
would really
missed out. He shouldn't have turned down the 10-year, $29 million a year contract that he was offered in Detroit. That was a huge mistake.
That we were saying the whole time that that was the dark horse place for him because of AJ Hinch and all their prospects, and yeah, that we talked about that as much as we talked about the Gosman stuff, like Gosman and Kikuchi stuff. Yeah, do you guys want to wrap her up now? We're hitting about 52. We're 51 minutes. But yeah, no, thanks for getting involved, guys. Yeah, it's always great to have more people involved and get the discussion going. But that's all for now. This is the Toronto Until podcast. I'm Steve Artabello with Anthony Harris and Theo Giordano. As always, you can find us at our website, torontountilt.com. We should definitely start adding stuff to that. You can find us at our Twitter, at Toronto Untilt. You can find us on Twitch, where we stream live. Just search Toronto Untilt as well. On YouTube, where we stream live and where all these videos will live. You can like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends. Just look for Toronto Untilt on YouTube. And, of course, the audio will be posted to anywhere that you get podcasts. Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Bleaker, all the things. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends that the Blue Jays are doing big things. And, yeah, it's World Series time.